Hi, I'm Benjamin Payne. At the K-12 Education Office at Hillsdale College, we support school founding groups and their efforts to start classical schools across the country. Finding the right leader is one of the first and most important steps to building a successful school. While we do consider experience in education, we seek candidates who exhibit unwavering personal integrity, honesty, courage, and servant-hearted leadership. Perhaps that's you. If you're looking to engage in fulfilling, impactful, and challenging work protecting our nation's future and building up the next generation of virtuous citizens, we'd love to hear from you. I'm looking for strong school leaders right now. Learn more about how you can make a difference at hillsdale.edu/leader. hillsdale.edu/LEADER. That's hillsdale.edu/leader.
Welcome to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, bringing you insight into classical education and its unique emphasis on human virtue and moral character, responsible citizenship, content-rich curricula, and teacher-led classrooms. Now your host, Scot Bertram.
Thanks for listening. The Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast is part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. You also can find more information on topics and ideas discussed on this show at our website, k12.hillsdale.edu. We're joined by Jordan Blackstone. She is a school leader fellow at the Hillsdale College K-12 Education Office. Jordan, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Tell us about your interest in education, how you decided you would be involved in teaching, what led you into the profession.
Sure. I was one of those people who seemed to know what she wanted to do as early as kindergarten. And so teaching was vaguely on the horizon all through primary and secondary school. By the time I graduated, I was faced with the decision of moving out west and pursuing formal ministry training, which was alarming to family considering I'd never left the farm and at that point hadn't learned to drive. So I had a crucial conversation with my mama in the living room. And I said, with all the enthusiasm of a 17-year-old, I just want to teach people how to think. And so that tipped the scales and I pursued formal training and education. After my undergraduate years, I had no interest in being a teacher, so I didn't become one. Instead, I became a youth mentor for a nonprofit organization, and I fell in love with working with teenagers. And so those two experiences together got me back into the classroom eventually.
And you spent some time in the classroom before arriving here at Hillsdale in the School Leader Fellow program. What were you doing?
I have spent over 12 years in public education, teaching humanities, particularly literature and writing, in the high school levels.
How did you hear about the school fellowship program here at Hillsdale College in the K-12 Education Office, and why were you interested in that kind of opportunity?
I actually heard about the fellowship through the K-12 Education podcast. So I heard Isaac.
Success story.
Indeed. So I was a regular listener at that point, and I heard Isaac Johnson, the first school leader fellow, sharing about his experience. And initially, I just listened to it like a podcast. And by that evening, I felt God kind of nudging me back to look at it. And the position was still open. And with great urgency, I applied. I really wanted at that point, I had begun to accumulate some administrative experiences through my teaching. And I saw what mission-driven leadership can do and intentionality can do and how that can create a space for good work to flourish. And so the fellowship seemed like an ideal place to see theory and practice lived out on a daily basis.
So as this position as school leader fellow is explained to you, what's your understanding of where you'll be working, what you'll be doing, what's expected of you as a school leader fellow?
The position is beautifully layered. So it is an opportunity to have a window into the day-to-day life of a school leader. So I work closely with Mike Roberts, the headmaster at Hillsdale Academy, and Julie Apel, the assistant headmaster. My day starts with car line, as every day should, and greeting students. I had the opportunity to teach a 6th grade math class at the academy, and then it is kind of a great deal of variety throughout the day. So whether that is tutoring students, conducting classroom observations, having conversations with parents, it's the whole gamut, which is kind of the idea behind the fellowship is boots on the ground. What does this look and feel like to be in school leadership?
Yeah, so the idea behind the fellowship, what's the goal of this time that you've spent here at Hillsdale Academy and in the School Leader Fellowship program? What did you want to get out of it, and what did they want to, how did they want to help you?
Certainly. The need for school leaders is prevalent. And so there are a lot of pathways to step into school leadership. For a teacher coming out of the classroom with relatively large amount of teaching experience to pursue more schooling, although would be delightful for me. I would be a student forever, formally, if I could. I wanted to see that in person. So the idea is determining whether or not this is a good fit for this person, for the role. The rhythm of a school leader is very different from the rhythm of a classroom teacher. And so while I had, like I mentioned, begun to accumulate some administrative experiences and greatly enjoyed those, I didn't have a whole lot of reservation about whether or not that part would be a good fit. The idea is this is one pathway to be able to connect founding boards and schools that are starting with quality candidates who have an interest in serving in school leadership.
Let's start big picture. What would you say has been perhaps the most impactful, most important part or parts of your experience at the Academy and the School Leader Fellowship program?
Certainly. I mentioned that the fellowship is quite layered, so it's actually a really challenging conversation to have. If I'm going to highlight a few of those, what motivated me to pursue the fellowship was wanting to see this lived out on a daily basis. And so I'm happy to report that that is probably one of the greatest takeaways of the fellowship, of seeing a mission-driven group of people who are committed to intentionality and living that out on a daily basis. So working with the leadership at the Academy, the faculty and staff, the parents, provided that well-rounded experience. Additionally, the fellowship provides opportunity to work with the K-12 Education Office. So that included going on site visits to other schools with the teacher support team, attending events like the Hoogland events and the School Leader Conference and School Leader Boot Camp and board development. So being a part of those trainings and seeing the support that the K-12 Education Office offers to the folks who are boots on the ground doing this work day in, day out is crucial for someone considering school leadership to know that this is the support that's behind the scenes, ensuring success on these school campuses on a daily basis. The last one was a little surprising as a takeaway. You think that you're stepping into school leadership, so you're going to have a layer of distance from the students, and that wasn't the case. So as we're wrapping up the school year, there's a bit of bittersweet because these kiddos have become a part of my world and a part of my story. And that's a really great takeaway to recognize that even though you're stepping into school leadership, those conversations, those moments are what matter most. And you can have those connections in this role as well.
You're there to work, learn, observe. What did you see as perhaps the defining qualities of good leadership inside the Academy?
The first thing that comes to mind is stewardship. There's an extreme amount of trust placed in the leaders in these schools to steward, whether that is financial resources, human beings who have entrusted their children to these teachers, and having a leader who recognizes the need to steward that with wisdom is a huge takeaway from observing at the Academy this year. I would also indicate the idea of influence through conversation. It's an ongoing, like school leadership is having conversations with people and you're just switching audiences at any given moment. And that's how that mission is lived out, whether you're talking to a first-year teacher or a 20-year veteran teacher, you're having a crucial conversation with a parent, you're greeting visitors who are coming to check out your school and see what it's like. Those moments are where Mike Roberts and Julie Apel excel in being able to have those conversations and steward the opportunity they've been given.
As you talk to parents of prospective students at Hillsdale Academy, how are you conveying to them what makes classical education different, what makes Hillsdale Academy a special place? Why should they entrust their students, their children, to the teachers and the staff at your school?
Sure. Hillsdale Academy and the other classical charter schools in the network offer parents an opportunity to choose an excellent education for their students. It's very tempting to have those conversations with parents by defining in the negative. This is what we are not. And so it's a challenge in those moments to have the right answers to say, this is what we do. We have good conversations about good literature. We understand mathematics on a deep level. Yes, we do procedures, but we also understand it conceptually. We have a curriculum that is intentionally integrated. And we always, Mike Roberts talks about, he had a state of the school address recently, and he spoke with parents and he talked about, we are looking to the adult that these children are becoming. And so there's a part of controlling that pacing of that conversation to recognize that this is the long game that we're in. And so we're looking to provide an education for students that would prepare them to be successful adults.
You mentioned you spent around a decade in public school education before becoming a school leader fellow at Hillsdale College and with the K-12 office. What were the differences that you noticed between how an education affected students where you taught previously and how an education affected students at Hillsdale Academy?
Sure. I think one of the first lessons in the first week is that kids are kids wherever you are. And that's a really valuable lesson to learn. That being said, kids are incredible. And when you put incredible things in front of our students and you give them a repeated opportunity to behold what is beautiful, they rise to that occasion. And so the students in these schools and with the partnership of their parents, they have bought into an understanding that our kids are full of wonder and excitement and grit, and they can accomplish incredible things when that's put in front of them. I think that that's a remarkable takeaway from this. I was having a conversation just this week with a student, now teacher, who I mentor, who had the moment of reconciling when other teachers chose not to teach their students a text because it was deemed to be too difficult. And he was reckoning with that experience as a new teacher of where do I put these expectations that are lowered and how do I navigate that? And I think having a strong school leader and having a strong curriculum and a mission-driven school helps those conversations land somewhere that honors our students.
Talking with Jordan Blackstone. She is School Leader Fellow with Hillsdale College's K-12 Office of Education, working this past year at Hillsdale Academy. How has your work as a fellow prepared you for your future work in education?
Certainly. By design, the fellowship has that broad range of experiences. There's the front-facing opening car doors and saying good morning and greeting through the hallways. There's also the behind the scenes part of the reading that's being assigned and monthly reports and reflecting on what you've observed during the fellowship. I mentioned that the rhythm of a school leader is very different than that of a classroom teacher. And so I think that part of this allows you to see in a practical way what all a school leader faces on a daily basis. There's also an extreme opportunity to ask the right questions throughout the fellowship. So you're seeing 1,000 micro moments a day about what's happening, and the fellowship creates the space to pause and question why something happened, how it was able to occur, and have that conversation with someone who's been in school leadership for a really long time. So taking that experience into the future is invaluable.
What's inside you that made you say, I'm a good teacher, maybe I could be a great leader at a school?
I think there are a lot of teachers out there who their world is the classroom, and that's beautiful and that's right and that's good. There are also some teachers out there who early on, their world is the school. And by that, I mean, they see both what they're doing in their classroom, but they see how it connects to everything else. And it may just be a way that they're wired or a lens that they've adopted. I think that was part of it for me. But there's that tension of if I'm stepping out of the classroom, what does that mean? And I had to put it in a place of going, I'm going to take what is best about the teaching and learning that I've cultivated in my classroom, and I'm going to leverage that, and I'm going to scale that to serve other people. And so in some ways, it's very different from being in the classroom. And in other ways, it's not. You're still leading people to see something true and equip them to embrace that and apply it to their lives.
For listeners like you were a year ago or so, interested in this fellowship program, what kind of preparation or what kind of questions should they ask themselves?
Yeah, I think on a practical level, as far as preparation, particularly looking at this fellowship, familiarizing yourself with the K-12 curriculum is the first start. That is the essence of what we do. We don't build the schools to build the schools, and we don't teach in these schools to teach. We do this because there's something worth learning. So the deeper you can understand that, and it takes multiple times of going back and reviewing this 13-year super rich curriculum. I would also say that them being able to prepare themselves by getting in classrooms that aren't your own, particularly if this is someone serving as a teacher right now and they're considering the shift. Getting out of your classroom into another world that's not your grade range, that's not your content area, and observing, and then developing that habit of reflection is going to prepare you really well for stepping into this fellowship, where that's a key component of what you're doing, is being able to learn from others, reflect on what you see, and be able to guide yourself towards what would that conversation look like if I were in a school leadership position.
What should a potential school leadership fellow expect in this program?
Definitely variety and a bit of stretch. So whether that is stepping into substitute for a 4th grade Latin class or 2nd grade music class. As a former, probably forever, high school literature teacher, I taught a 6th grade math class, and it was beautiful stretch for me and fundamentally changed who I am as a teacher. So having that flexibility is a great thing to prepare for where you can, and recognizing that every day is going to be beautifully different, and embracing that is going to be a helpful expectation to have.
How was your typical day different, not from a task perspective, but maybe from a philosophical or from an approach perspective, different from your days in the classrooms as a teacher and your days here as a school leader fellow working more on the administration side?
So in the classroom, obviously you have a lesson planned, you have an interaction plan with your students, you seek to have that quality engagement and that moment of learning, and that guides what you're doing. And from my previous experience, you did that 7 or 8 times a day. When you're stepping into this role of school leadership, you are looking for those opportunities to lead through influence, particularly as a school leader fellow. You know that your role here is slightly different than one of the administrators who are permanently on staff, but you're looking for those moments to have a conversation with a teacher, to encourage that teacher, to encourage that student, and to also in the back of your mind constantly be going, what can I learn from this? And what can I file away? I mentioned that habit of reflection. I'm a writer, and so mine took the form of pages and pages of reflection. I don't think that that's necessary for everyone, but those are the moments that you take away. You're mining for gold, and it's very, very prevalent.
Finally, Jordan Blackstone, what kind of advice would you give to those that are considering school leadership generally, not just those who might be thinking about the school leader fellowship here with Hillsdale's K-12 office, but leadership generally?
Sure. One of the things that helped me most was taking the time and space to articulate my why for school leadership, knowing that variability is going to be a part of your day-to-day. Why did I choose to do this? And the clearer you can make that, I think that's helpful. You're going to sign on to being the steward of that school's mission. But there's a personal why that has to take place. And I think that that's really helpful in those moments of stretch or push or surprise. I don't know a single school leader who steps into that position confidently feeling that they know everything they need to do to execute that job well. I say that to say another moment is just having that generous honesty about your abilities and know where you need to grow, because you're constantly going to be growing, but also being honest about what you bring to the table and how you can leverage that to serve people. This is a job of service. And so the clearer you can get on why you chose to serve in this way, the better equipped you're going to be.
I lied. One final question. Sure. Relationships between you and the students. Did you notice that the students looked at you in a different manner in the classroom as opposed to being part of, again, a leadership role at the school?
Certainly. Yeah. There was a moment where I walked into one of the literature classroom at the academy, which is quite beautiful. And I had a moment of remorse and mourning because that used to be my identity. And so I had that identity change. But that also meant that the interaction with the students was different as well. Every adult in that building, in any school building, is a teacher. You have the opportunity to teach these students something incredible. This is no different, but it does require a little bit of recalibration to recognize that your role has shifted. What I love about so many of the school leaders in the Hillsdale Classical Schools is that they are still legitimately teachers in the classroom. And I think that's by design, is it's helping those students and helping those leaders remember that they're always going to be a teacher.
Jordan Blackstone, School Leader Fellow at Hillsdale College's K-12 Education Office, or at k12.hillsdale.edu. Jordan, thanks so much for joining us here on the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast.
Thank you.
I'm Scot Bertram. We invite you to like us on Facebook. Search for Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education. You also can follow us on Instagram at Hillsdale_K12. Hillsdale_K12 on Instagram. Thank you for listening to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.